So, hi everyone. Welcome to our information session. We are Bruin Shelter. The time is 6:04 on Wednesday, April 7th. So, the next slide. Okay, so what we're doing today, we're going to go through introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, and then, of course, the part that you're probably interested in, how to get involved. If you have any questions, feel free to hold on to them until the end, because we do have a designated Q&A session, which won't be recorded, so you won't have to feel pressured about how you seem on video. Okay, go on next slide. So this is our board. We are 10 people total, super cool people. Um, I've had the pleasure of getting to know them for the past year. Um, yeah, I guess 8 out of 10 people on the board are pretty cool. Anyway, let's keep me going.
Wait, introduce yourself, Doug.
Oh, yes, sorry. That's also important. Hi, my name is Doug, and I am one of the co-directors of staff this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa. I'm the other co-director of staff with Doug.
Hi guys, I'm Michelle and I'm the current president.
I'm Carolyn. My eyes are closed in this photo, and I'm the current IVP. Oh, that stands for Internal Vice President.
Awesome. The rest of our board wasn't able to make it today, but I'm sure they would love to meet you one day. Anyway, for this slide, why Bruin Shelter? Well, LA is actually a big place for this issue. There are nearly 59,000 individuals experiencing homelessness on any given night. There's some of the highest population of homeless youth, and they make up the fastest growing age group. However, we only have 4 youth shelters supported by students and none in the West Side. And we have this lovely video that we can play for you right now.
And to give you guys context, this is one of our co-founders talking in the video.
Michelle, we can't hear it. You gotta share your computer audio.
You can't hear still? Okay, hold on one second. Sorry guys, 1 second. Okay, let's try this again.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Boswell. Well, they look like students everywhere. They go to class, study, and worry about exams. But thousands of students across the country don't have a place to sleep or enough to eat. Students like Maritza Lopez. The free application for federal student aid in 2013 showed about 58,000 homeless students nationwide. Maritza became homeless when her family was evicted.
My family and I were kind of jumping around, like houses, sleeping wherever we can, like even if there was no couch.
Louis C. was getting his PhD at UCLA when he and a friend noticed students sleeping in classrooms.
You know, I worked 3 part-time jobs putting myself through college, and that worked out well for me. But the mathematics aren't the same anymore. Rent has gone up 60% since the 1980s. College tuition has gone up more than 200%, and wages have gone up 9%.
So Louis helped start the Students for Students shelter. He slept in his car and used his rent money to launch the effort, but he needed a place for the students to live. Eric Schaefer is the senior pastor at Mount Olive Lutheran Church of Santa Monica.
That he went to 50 places of worship and got a no, and this was the 51st. Our 10 residents come after class, and they come into the shelter, they relax, they study, they have a meal together that is provided by more volunteers, and then they have a safe place to sleep.
Austin Gee is a UCLA volunteer.
And it's simply connecting with them over a plate of food or studying together with them. And it's something that I cannot replicate that experience anywhere else in college.
Maritza won a scholarship to UCLA, stayed at the shelter for 6 months, and now is in permanent housing.
You can come live, you can move in here this day. Oh, I have my own bed, like, it's so cool. It's really nice that someone gives you hope.
Louis says there are 200 students on the waiting list. For PBS SoCal, I'm Bonnie Boswell. Hello, I'm Bonnie Boswell.
Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that little video. If you couldn't tell, we really admire our founder, Louis C. For this slide, we have some statistics for you guys just to know. So about 5% of UC and private university students experience housing insecurity. About 1 in 10 Cal State students also experience housing insecurity, and nearly 20% of LA community college students also experience housing insecurity. And recently, we also found out that about 44% of undergraduate students have experienced food security in this past year. So definitely a huge, huge, huge invisible issue. And what is Bruin Shelter? So we call ourselves a home for students by students, and we run under like the student for student model. And this is actually the first student run shelter for students, and the third student run shelter in the entire nation after Harvard. And if you didn't already know, there's a school across town called USC that also recently opened Trojan Shelter. So we're definitely expanding our horizon.
And I would also like to add that the residents are not just UCLA students, but they're any student in the greater Los Angeles area.
So we really pride ourselves in our three-pronged mission statement. So the first one is that we provide fellow students experiencing homelessness with the basic necessities they deserve, the opportunity to invest in their education, and a place to call home. Second, we want to empower our shelter volunteers to become social justice leaders, philanthropists, and innovators. So hopefully that'll be you guys. And third, we want to be an open source model for other universities to create student-run shelters.
So how we run, our shelter is entirely volunteer-based. We also do collaborations with the David Geffen School of Medicine, Mobile Clinic, and all the other organizations you see listed on the slide. We also work with a case management team, so medical and MSW students, Masters of Social Work, to provide individualized care and transition residents into permanent housing. So whereas, staff, Melissa, Michelle, Carolyn, and myself, we run the daily operations, and so do our undergraduate volunteers. And then on the other side, case management, that would be more so for graduate students, right? Both play an incredibly important part in our operations, right? And also, worth mentioning, we also get donations from partners and people who believe in our vision. Go ahead to the slide. Sure. Okay. Awesome. So ways to get involved, and definitely what you're here for. So the position, if you choose to apply, is for our shelter staff. And so this slide kind of details what your responsibilities would look like if you were admitted. So you would run the shelter's shift operations with 2 other volunteers. So for a total of 3 people. We require about 4 to 5 shifts per quarter, overnight shifts. So you'd be there from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And so that would occur, roughly every other week. You get to interact with residents, and that is probably one of the most highlighted parts of our staff's experiences. You also get to cook dinner, and then you ensure the safety of the residents in your rounds as you lock up at night. You also can attend socials and programs to get to know your fellow staff. They're really cool people. And then you can join committees. So the committees have kind of been, at the forefront of our program for this past year, obviously because of the ongoing pandemic and the virtual setting of our program. And so I believe we have 6 committees that you might be interested in. The first is engagement. And so, what we do is try to foster a sense of camaraderie amongst not only our staff, but also our clients/residents. I think Melissa and Michelle are laughing at me. It's because camaraderie is kind of the go-to word when talking about engagement. We also have advocacy, which, of course, as the name kind of details, they do advocacy projects. So I believe recently they've been working on the backpack project and assembling care packages, right? We also have, I believe, the policy committee, which reviews our policy book, tries to revise policy that affects our residents and clients because it's a very important aspect of running a shelter. We also have reform, which is largely concerned with staff education, right? And so, going into shift, you do interact with the residents, but you don't always learn like what causes homelessness. What does being unhoused affect you as a person? How does it affect your well-being? How does it affect your day-to-day? And so, because it's such an important issue that intersects various issues beyond what you like typically look at, so like mental health, food security, finances, to name a few. So not to get long-winded, but the reform committee likes to try to educate themselves and other members in the organization about this sort of topic. And then of course we have podcast committee, super cool. They're kind of like the voice of Bruin Shelter. They meet with other people outside of Bruin Shelter, have talks, and try to, generate a message, right? And so, as a shelter staff, you could get involved in our committees, and then you could also contribute to our advocacy and outreach events. To the next slide. Right, and so this seems like a lot, and we're obviously not going to thrust you, into the fire without any proper training. So if you're admitted, volunteers receive extensive training, including, suicide prevention, sexual assault and domestic violence training. And then we also issue a series of online training modules, which include the psychological first aid training, as well as working with homeless and runaway youth. And then of course there's HIPAA and FERPA. We also do food handling and safety training. So, like if you're not very good at cooking like me, and most of your life you just spent washing dishes as your way to contribute to things in the kitchen, don't worry about it. We'll try to get your back, try to bring you up to speed and get you more confident in the kitchen, where there are knives, where there's oil, blah 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 blah. We also do in-house training to get you more familiar with the shelter and its operations, and hopefully when you do go for your first shift, you'll be paired with more experienced people so that you won't be completely lost. I see we have a comment. Hot Pockets, let's go. Dude, Hot Pockets are so good. Okay, and not to get distracted. Let's go on to the next slide.
All right, so what does a typical day in the life at the shelter look like? So as Doug mentioned a little while ago, kind of like the normal time frame is like from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. But obviously you want to arrive at the shelter maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a few minutes, so that way you can unlock the shelter for the residents that will come in around 7. You'll have some time to settle down and figure out how to cook dinner. So we usually have like a recipe book that details like exactly what kind of steps you need to take in order to prepare the dinner. There might be around like 10 residents or sometimes less, depending on like who's going to come into the shelter. So you'll work in like a team of 3 to prepare dinner for the guests or the residents, and then around 9 you can eat with the residents, and that's actually my favorite part of going into shelter because you really get to bond with the residents over food, and I think that's some of the most interesting conversations happen at the dining table. And after that, you can maybe do like some homework. You can choose to do that with the other staff that are on shift with you, or you can even do homework with the residents if you want. You can just talk to them, anything, bond with them. And then probably around 10:30, you might want to start doing evening rounds, kind of like locking up the shelter, making sure that everything's safe. And then around 12 a.m., you are allowed to sleep. Like we won't force you to stay up until 2 a.m. for no reason. You don't have to wait for residents to come back if maybe like they're coming back from work, unless you want to, of course. It's really up to you guys. And around 6 a.m., you will wake up and do morning rounds. And if the residents want breakfast that day, you can prepare that for them. And then by 7, we ask that our staff leave the shelter, only because the shelter is a church, and right next door there's a preschool. So we want to just be respectful of everyone around there and just leave on time. And And here are just some photos looking back at Bruin Shelter, which actually started in 2016. So we're currently going into our 6th season this year. But yeah, you can even see like the ribbon cutting ceremony, and they put in like the little beds and sofas and like the loft. So we've come a long way with this org, and I'm very proud of where we are now. And here are some pictures of our wonderful volunteers. So we have some pictures at GM, members making burritos at our burrito project. I think they went to Lake Tahoe one year for a retreat. And we have some pictures at, I think, a winter training, live training at the shelter, where we kind of just walk you through everything you didn't know for like a day in the life at the shift.
And of course, all of our efforts wouldn't be possible without our community partners. So, on this page, we have a lot of the community partners that we collaborate with. We most prominently collaborate with the David Geffen School of Medicine. And, we get a lot of our groceries from Whole Foods. So if you're a fan of Whole Foods and you want to eat some dinner made of whole food ingredients, this might be the place for you. Yeah, we are also featured in the press. We do get people reaching out to us. As you saw, Bonnie Boswell, I'm not sure who she is, but she reached out to us to do a piece. We get Daily Bruin reaching out to us. And I believe our very own Michelle got reached out by the Wall Street Journal, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Big baller,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So she's a big baller.
Essentially, we have a lot of media presence, a lot of media outlets, especially pre-COVID, like to reach out to us because student homelessness is such a unique issue that does not have enough light shed on it. So we are very, very influential in kind of creating the narrative that we want to push out about student homelessness and about kind of redefining the stigma around it too.
Very well said. So I think Melissa mentioned this on an earlier slide, but part of our mission is to serve as a template for other shelters. And so what the product of that has been Trojan Shelter, obviously our USC counterpart sister shelter. And so they opened recently in Koreatown, and they've been operating for the past year. Pretty cool effort. And so, when you look at Bruin Shelter and you say, oh, Bruin Shelter, how can you tackle such a large issue when you only have 10 beds? Well, obviously our impact goes well beyond those 10 beds. You talk about volunteer empowerment, you talk about you talk about, residents cycling in and out because they're moved over to transitional housing. And then you have products like this, you get, other shelters being open. And so Bruin Shelter definitely has a very, tangible impact.
And other institutions are in the talks with us and discussing starting their own shelters as well. So this is definitely something that is being spread, not just between UCLA and USC. It's really something that a lot of students around the nation have identified as an issue. And we've definitely kind of come together as a large coalition of students to put forth this mission.
And at Bruin Shelter, we would love the opportunity to reconnect with previous residents. So here's like one quote that we got. Going to school has always been the most normal, consistent activity in my life. When I didn't have a home, I hid the fact for so long. I really like being a student and that everyone here has that in common. So this just shows that like Bruin Shelter space is really welcoming to our residents, or that's at least our goal.
And also with this resident as well, it's kind of a cute story because she actually came back to help volunteer with us after she was transitioned to permanent housing and after she actually became a student at UCLA and transferred. So it's a very heartwarming story and we all love her so much.
And we have another quote. I had a conflicted family life. I never really knew my mom, except that she didn't know her mom either. I dove into school so I could build a good life with my own two hands, far from the past, ready for the future. I want to be fearless in getting to my dreams and goals. I'll let that sit with you guys.
And with that, we invite you to, apply and join our family. I've been a part of Bruin Shelter for 2 years. Michelle has been a part of it for like forever. She's, getting up there. But it's been a really good time. It's been an incredibly fulfilling experience. I've met a lot of people. I've become more of an informed and passionate advocate, and it has truly, transformed my college experience. I think it's like the crown jewel, as I called it, the last info session, the crown jewel of my, college experience. Kind of UCLA, if you will. Next slide. And so, yeah, apply now. I am going to put the application link in the Zoom chat. And then these are ways to contact us. This particular email redirects to Melissa and me. So if you ever email us, it will probably be us answering, or our incoming directors of staff. I believe it's Z and Julia. No, I know it's Z and Julia. And then we are, also on social media. We also have a website if you want to read up on us. So I'm going to